All right, Cole, what's happening, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. It's a lot better to talk about wins. I'm enjoying that part.
Isn't it? It really is, man. It's a
Yeah.
fair point.
No, that's not true. I,
Um,
I like being negative. I don't want it to be negative, and now
you are
I'm
the negative. You're known as the negative one. I'm known as the positive
no doubt.
one. Let's talk some football. Sorry, we haven't been around. It's we've had kids out of school. I'm moving. It's been crazy probably the last week. So our schedule's been a little off. Normally we would have been on here on uh, Sunday or Monday morning. Um, but it's just been a lot going on. So we'll get back on schedule here soon. Real quick, shout out to our sponsors of the show. By the way, I still think I have like a I mean, I cannot get like this, congestion out of the system.
Yeah, I
I'm
was I
getting
was
there.
past it, and then I decided to cut the grass while
Nice.
Colin took a nap yesterday, and then it just started right back up.
That'll do it. That'll do it. I'm also enjoying second summer. It's my favorite season.
Yeah. Or is it third?
Yeah, I don't know. I lose track. A little summer, a little early fall. I mean,
Yep.
second summer, a little late fall. Then we're gonna have a winter one. Um,
You
all
know,
right.
I've talked to Christian Clemente about this. You know, he's from Montana. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he was really cold the other night when we were at the Pike Road Booker T. Washington game. I was like, dude, isn't it cold in Montana? Like, he goes, yeah, this is different. It's different here.
That's
It's like,
funny. I
okay,
wonder if you get used
yeah,
to it here. I mean, you get used to the warmth here, and then when it's cold, it hits you different, maybe.
it's just
It's like if I grew up in a cold place, it wouldn't be cold. You're just used to it.
you
Like
would
it wouldn't
think.
feel cold.
He
Yeah, I don't
said
know. Maybe
it's
Chris.
a wet cold. He said it's like humid almost.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Um, all right, let's jump into this thing. Session Cocktail sponsor the show. Appreciate everything they do to be a part of the show. If you haven't checked them out, come check them out. New Mexico State game or the Iron Bowl. I'm sure they'll be packed. They're down there on Magnolia Avenue in downtown Auburn, right next to Taco Mama. Great happy hour drinks, 4 to 6. They do reservations. um, if you if you go by there, you can put your name on the list and then go hop over and get some food or walk around downtown, and then they'll text you or call you. So if it's a 30, 40-minute wait, something like that, just go put your name on the list, go walk around, things like that. But that generally only happens, Thursday nights, maybe Friday nights. Happy hours and all that. You should be pretty good. But great drinks, bar seating and booth and lounge seating. It's a really cool spot. Session Cocktail, downtown Auburn, Alabama. Also, want to give a shout out to GameTime.co. They're a sponsor of On Three as well as Auburn Live. I get asked a bunch about tickets and whether I can get tickets for people, and I cannot get you tickets unless I know people have tickets, but I can't hook you up with tickets just because I'm in the media. So GameTime.co, go to GameTime.co. Last minute tickets for not just games, but concerts or comedy shows or entertainment events or whatever it might be. They do a really good job. Download the app and get some last minute tickets from GameTime.co. Use the promo code War Eagle. Get 20. Well, crap! Now I forgot. 20% off. I think it's 20% off. It's 20% or $20. Probably should get that right. But go to GameTime.co and check them out. By the way, if you find tickets somewhere else and they're cheaper than what you found on GameTime.co, they will reimburse you that difference plus a little bit. So it's kind of a guarantee they do right there at GameTime.co. Appreciate them being a part of the show. All right, Cole. Let's talk a little bit about Vanderbilt, obviously, and then look ahead to Arkansas. I was there in Nashville. Really cool to see all the Auburn fans there. That stadium is a cluster. It is a joke. I mean, it'd be
crazy.
cool once they have finished if they finish their projects and stuff. It'll be nice that stadium needs it. But right now, you enter through the basketball arena. It's like a maze. It's a whole thing. We did press conferences outside the stadium in a construction trailer. Legitimately,
Are you
the
serious?
trailer that's being used for when you go have a construction site, you have these trailers that are set up kind of the headquarters while the construction's going on, that's where we did press conference. We went out of the stadium, we went across the street into a parking lot where there was a construction trailer, and like we were all sitting in there waiting on freeze, and a construction dude, just walked in with his hard hat on, and like walked into his office. We're like, "Hey, man." So that place is wild, but
That is the
Auburn
most
went there.
Vandy. That's the most Vandy thing in the
It
world.
is.
Or is it that their punter has the most career punting yards, like in college football?
Yeah, I
Is
think
that
that was
is that the
probably
most Vandy stat of all time?
yes. Yeah, it's absolutely the most Vandy stat of all time. But pretty day, great day for football. Um, Great day for football, just kind of a mess. Wasn't a mess on the field for the most part. Thought Auburn played well. Score definitely should have been worse. I mean, just take away Peyton Thorne's interception decision and give Amari Kelly a catch. There's touchdown going both ways. You know what I mean? Just literally those two plays could have been touchdowns going either direction. Taking one off the board for them and giving one to Auburn. So score should have been worse. Auburn played pretty well. I think the big plays were awesome to see offensively. Defense continues to be pretty solid. DJ James made some money. He looked good. What were your takeaways, if any, from that game? I mean, I think they win it. By the way, I had 31-17, 31-15. I told you it's like an every other week thing.
We
So
both
don't
said
act.
31-17.
Yeah. We did. We both did. So Arkansas, I'm going to be way off. But what'd you think of the game? About what you expected? Was there anything that you were shocked by, like good or bad? I mean, or is it kind of just status quo? Went in there, took care of business, make it two in a
I
row.
actually, I think Peyton Thorne's getting a lot of, um, you know, that he played well. A lot of people say that he played well, and he did. In fact, I kind of graded him in my grading system like I do. And look, that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to act like I know everything, but I think it's a good scale, just like PFF is. It's a good scale of what happened in the game, and
Yeah.
I graded him on RPOs 100%. He was good on those, clean. When he needed to hand it off, he did. When he needed to throw it, he did, and he was accurate. But when it came to drop back passing, he sort of reverted to old ways a little bit. In fact, he's somewhere around 50% on the passing for me because there was a lot of plays where I felt like he threw the ball too late. I felt like he held on to it too long, didn't stay in the pocket as long as he needed to a few times. Just erratic. So that that may not have been seen by the eye because he did make a lot of good throws, especially that corner route to Rivaldo Fairweather was great for the touchdown. The
Mm-hmm.
dropped ball by Amari Kelly was a great throw.
Great throw.
He even put one in a pretty good place with Camden Brown when he sort of mistimed his jump on a deeper ball. By the way, I think I've studied Philip Montgomery enough to know when he's calling plays because I think they both do. I think Freeze calls his share of plays and Montgomery
For sure.
calls his share of plays. Montgomery does this thing, and he did it at Tulsa because I went and watched the Tulsa Ole Miss game from last year. Not only did I get to watch Montgomery's offense in that game, got to watch Jane Muskrat and Dylan Wade and see how good they were. So I've watched that game several times. Philip Montgomery will call the exact same play twice in a row if he feels like it worked. And I love that. So the mistimed jump by Camden Brown, he came back to that play with Amari Kelly. Same play. There was another time where he called a play, and it was the exact same play. It was a wheel route to maybe Jarquez Hunter, and Thorne didn't throw it. He was open. Very next play, they run the wheel route. It's Jay Fair, and he hits Jay Fair down inside the 10. So I'm almost positive that's Philip Montgomery because I've seen him do that where he just calls the exact same play twice in a row. And I don't care if you know it's coming. It worked. It's going to work again. You're in the same defense. I love that. I think that's a good idea. And it worked for Auburn. So I'm trying to distinguish when Hugh Freeze is calling plays and when Montgomery's calling plays. And I just want to say on the defense, I think we can. I think they're just good. I think they're just good. They're not deep. Don't have a lot of depth. Can't play a lot of snaps because of it. But they're just good. They're coached well, and they're getting as much as they can out of them.
Yeah, the play calling thing's interesting, and I thought about this on Monday when the Ole Miss game. We posted on the board that that Hugh Freeze took over Robbie's plays in that game. And then I asked Hugh Freeze in the press conference, hey, are you calling plays? And he kind of admitted he was calling some of the 13 personnel stuff with Robbie. Now I'm curious how that's working. Probably should have asked him that on Monday. I just didn't think about it. But you've got, Robbie's pretty much out of the equation now. First game all year where there was no quarterback rotation against Vanderbilt. It was all Peyton Thorne. And of course, Robbie barely played against State. And then we go to practice on Tuesday, and it very much looked like, I posted on the message board, it very much looked like Holden Gerner was the number 2 quarterback. Now we see 15 minutes of a certain portion of practice, but there is a rotation. I mean, if you watch every other position, the dudes who are starting, the guys, they're at the front of the line when you go through these rotations, and then it goes in order. Very much looked like Holden was the number 2 guy. And that would line up with Hugh Freeze and Peyton Thorne both saying Holden Gerner got more reps leading into the Vanderbilt game. And Hugh Freeze even giving Holden Gerner some credit, saying he had a great week of practice and looked really good. So all that kind of lines up to Holden being number 2. But having said all that, I'm curious how the play calling is differentiated now. Robbie's out of the picture. The Robbie package isn't a thing right now, and it probably won't be a thing. There's 3 games left. We're done with that. I mean, for all intent, I'm sure Robbie will come back in the game in one of these 3 games in a situation, but the rotating appears to be done. Thank God. And the switching of possession seems to be done. That will always be just a mind-blowing thing to me. Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery are way smarter than me when it comes to offense, but I just will go to my garages. Will do not understand the quarterback rotation and what the thought process was with that. But I'm wondering what plays Freeze calls now, because I agree with you. I think there's definitely some mix going. Hugh Freeze said on Monday it's a collaboration. He called it a collaboration, and he said Monty still calls his fair share. Well, of course that means that Hugh's calling plays. So maybe he gets involved on 3rd down. Maybe he gets involved in some red zone. I'm curious, or maybe it's just you're the play caller and I'm going to chime in from time to time and say, run this play. Hey, let's do this. Maybe it's not so much Hugh has a possession or a package. Maybe it's just he's just going to stay really involved in just general play calling.
What in the words that he used? I have a big hand, or I have a influence on the play sheet. Is that what he said? The play sheet?
He keeps going back to that.
The call sheet?
He keeps going back to that, and it's something that he said weeks ago. It was really going back to towards the beginning of the season, maybe even after Cal, where he came out and he said, I approved for the first time, maybe like I approved every sheet that was on the call sheet for the game. And that was probably after week 2 or 3 when he came out and said that, when Auburn's offense it might have been after Cal, and then going into the next week, maybe Samford, I guess it was, where he first sort of said that. And he keeps kind of going back to that. And I agree. I mean, he is. So basically he's looking at the call sheet, and every call, for people that maybe aren't aware, you go into a game you don't go into the game with your whole playbook. You go into the game with the plays that you think will work against the team you're playing, things you want to do in that game. And so that sheet is what Hugh Freeze is saying. I approve every single one of those plays. When we go into a game, there won't be a play called that I haven't approved of.
Yeah.
Is what he's saying. But it is interesting. He kind of keeps saying that, but that's not really what people are asking. The question to him and what people are asking is like, are you literally calling plays in the game? Are you the play caller? And he kind of keeps sort of saying, yeah, I'm involved. Monty's calling his fair share and I approve all the plays. Well, that's not really it's sort of a diversion.
Yeah.
Without, so he kind of, he's sort of hesitant, which I understand, to maybe go into detail about, well, I call all these plays and Philip calls these plays, and he just calls it a collaboration, which is probably fair.
I thought it was hilarious in the Monday press conference when I think it was the same guy that asked the question that got him kind of fired up.
Yeah.
And good question. And they were both good questions. It's just the way he answered them, and it struck a chord with him, I guess. And this week he said, I tried to tell Thorne, bro, like, hey, look, man, they want me to throw the ball when we're backed up in the end zone. You gotta make those plays. You can't be throwing picks. Pick six is right there. And he's sitting there on the sideline going, man, I knew I should have run the ball right there and just punted.
It was funny. It was a very, very funny moment. He said he didn't actually say it to Peyton. He was thinking of saying it to Peyton. He's like, man,
Right.
the media wants me to throw down here. You got to help me out. You can't make that mistake. Everybody got a good laugh out of that.
That pick six. I guess it's just one of those fluke things. I mean, he is in the shadow right there. And I don't like to make excuses for that. And I know Peyton Thorne wouldn't either, but man, it's just that was one of those
He
things.
said somebody asked him because apparently the announcers maybe made a comment about the sun. And when we talked to Peyton on Monday, somebody said the announcer said maybe it was the sun. Was it the sun? And he kind of laughed. He goes, no. It's like I just didn't see him. That was definitely a pick where it was not fluke. I mean, I don't want to say fluky. It was a bad decision, and he has to own that. And I think he did. But that's not characteristic of him. He's thrown late sometimes, but that type of interception, that obvious and egregious, is definitely one where you go, he didn't see him. Huge mistake. It can happen in a big game, but I don't think it's something that's going to necessarily be repeated. You know what I mean?
Even though it was just a mistake and an honest mistake, I mean, you can understand why that would happen. I think it affected his confidence and his rhythm a little bit later in the game. As the game went on, he started holding on the ball a little bit more, like we saw him doing earlier in the year. The confidence maybe wasn't as good as it was at one point. So that play affected him some more in the game, because after that, when I'm looking at some of these plays, he's just late. He's late on a lot of reads. I actually, one of the drops by Fairweather, I put it on Thorne because the ball was late. It should have been thrown way before Fairweather. And this is some improvement I'm seeing from receivers right now. It's the spacing deal where he has to sit down in a hole and you're waiting for the ball to come. Well, the ball didn't come when he sat down in the zone hole. So what did he do? He started moving towards open space. And the throw was a little bit behind him because he was moving to the open space, but he was doing what he was taught, and it looked really good. It looked more, it looked more organized than it has, the whole operation. So you can see flashes of things getting better like that.
Minus the drops. That was a
the
major
drop.
step backwards.
I mean, look, drops are not.
6. Well, Free said 7. Free said he counted 7. I counted 6 during the game.
I had 6 during the game. But drops crazy. Are, that's where you go to recruiting. I mean, if you got guys that can't make the catch, then you go get some more guys. Bottom line.
Well, I think they are. You know what I'm saying?
They are. And by the way, this past week, I'm constantly checking on recruiting and all that, and it sounded like while there was definitely recruiting going on, it was a little bit less than it has been in weeks before. As in, there was a lot of emphasis on the game plan this week before Vandy, a lot of emphasis on football and practice, and hey, we need to win this game. I think in turn, winning a game against Vandy probably does help you in recruiting. You don't want to lose that game for sure. Even though it's year one, you get this mulligan or whatever, but you got to have positive momentum when you're going into recruit too. You got to have, hey, we took care of business this week to tell a recruit, instead of, well, if we had you. That doesn't always work when things look really bad, because perception is unfortunately everything right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Jarquez Hunter had a big game. It's 3 games in a row for him.
He did.
Let's see. Of course, a couple of big runs, which I don't know how to look at explosive plays. You love them. So that game was weird, right? Because at one point, Jarquez had a couple of massive runs, and then everything else was he was going nowhere.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a go both ways type deal in the first half, and for a lot of the game where you're looking at the numbers going, well, Auburn's got some nice rushing yards. Jarquez is having a good game, but he's not consistently going for 3, 4, 5. He didn't have like 4, 5, 7, 8-yard carries. It was some big plays. So love the big plays. Auburn's offense needs the big plays. Wish they had a little more push.
I think I can maybe help explain a little bit of that. I have 4 times where there was an unblocked linebacker that hit Jarquez Hunter at the line of scrimmage. And
Mhm.
what they did, if you remember from a week ago, every single run play was wide zone. You know what the wide zone looks like. It looks like stretch,
Yeah.
but it's about the same thing, really. The only difference is the play side tackle works inside out instead of trying to reach the guy. So they did a wide zone almost every single play a week ago. Well, this week it was inside zone. So they changed up the scheme a little bit, and they run the same scheme over and over because they have an RPO pass attachment with everything. So there's really no reason to be all that crazy in the run game because you can pull it at any time and throw it, and that's what Thorne did a lot. But uh, several times combos did not get completed. In other words, they're working on the down lineman. Somebody's got to climb to the linebacker, and it wasn't happening. So
Yeah.
there was a linebacker standing there in the hole waiting for Hunter to get there a couple of times, and that's something that they have to clean up on the offensive line. See, we haven't talked about the offensive line too much because they've been pretty consistent, but they had some inconsistencies for the first time that I saw, glaring inconsistencies.
Um, sorry, we're as we're recording this, we're also doing news in real time
Yep,
from
I'm gonna
Jeffrey on some basketball stuff. Expected, nothing crazy. It's Todd Pettiford signing.
multitask here.
Baller. So Todd Pettiford is a baller.
By the way, Justin, if you want to talk basketball, I know I'm not the basketball guy, but I watched every minute of that game last night.
we will. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. I love some basketball. I grew up playing it, so that's a joy for me.
What position did you play?
Oh, guard. You know what I'm saying? Can't play the
You,
can't play the
I
big
was
forward positions.
thinking you were a center.
Hell no. I tweeted the other day. I played against Bucky McMillan when I was growing up. He's now the coach at Sanford.
Huh.
He coached Mountain Brook High School to state championships. Now he's coaching at Sanford. Dude was awesome as a freaking growing up. I'm not shocked at all that he's a legit coach. Trying to think what else really stood out in that game against Vanderbilt. The defense continues to do their thing. Love that Nehemiah got a pick. That extended the turnover streak to 18 games, which I'd have to go back and look. They had a streak of 18 games in 07 into 08. I don't know what the next longest streak is. So I do know I went back 20 plus years and they've never had a turnover in every single game, at least going back to like 99. They're only 3 games away from doing that. But the takeaways has just been awesome. The secondary has been really good. Massive shout out to Zach Etheridge, Jeremiah Wilson. Ron Roberts helps with the corners too, but those guys are crushing it. I mean, you've got most of the guys in the secondary have got a pick at this point. Austin Keys coming back, awesome game. We can talk about that. Hugh Freeze said that he thought the linebackers had their best game. It's hard to not point to Austin Keys returning, not just because Austin Keys is good, but it reduces the snaps for the other guys. Larry Nixon doesn't have to play as much. Asante can maybe take a few less snaps. Cam Riley it trickles down a little bit. Larry Nixon's probably the most affected, but it trickles over to the others in terms of overall snaps. But Austin Keys has been really good. Jalen McLeod has now had about 3-4 games in a row where he's been pretty good. I looked it up. I think McLeod in 2 of his last 3 games, he's kind of, I remember I posted on the board, I think after LSU maybe. I posted on the board that, I was just surprised that he wasn't doing more. At that point, he was pretty healthy. And I think against LSU, it was like his first full sack of the season he recorded. And I was like, man, really thought we were going to get more from Jalen McLeod this year. Well, all of a sudden, against Vanderbilt, McLeod has 6 hurries on the quarterback, 2 hits on the quarterback, 9 total pressures against the quarterback. Then you go back 2 games against Ole Miss, 7 pressures, 4 hurries on the quarterback, 2 hits. So 2 of the last 3 games, he's had at least 4 quarterback hurries, at least 7 total pressures, and at least 2 hits on the quarterback. He didn't have as many as against Mississippi State. That's a little bit different offensive scheme, but he's starting to come into his own. He's starting to come into his own when you look at what he's bringing to the table. You look at what Austin Keys is doing healthy. Keontae Scott, of course, now back in rhythm. Whatever that defense has done, they have every opportunity to go into the Iron Bowl with a really good chance of keeping Auburn in that football game against an Alabama team that's getting really good on offense. But this defense is getting better. I expect them to go to Fayetteville and play well. KJ Jefferson's a monster, and that offense will be energized with a new OC. Be interesting to see what they do. That could be a trip up type deal for Auburn's defense because you're not exactly sure. You only have really one good game film of Kenny Guyton, but Ron Roberts has been awesome in game at adjustments. But that defense, man, I mean, it's one of the better jobs of coaching in terms of Ron Roberts that I can remember for a team that was just is limited in depth. And when we say limited in depth, like they've got guys. What we mean is that they're limited with like championship depth, like elite depth. You know what I mean? They got a guy you can put in there. You can toss in there a second string guy. It's not like they don't have bodies. It's just the caliber of bodies is not what it needs to be. And even it's obviously even some starting positions, but the job that he's done getting stops, they've been pretty good at getting people off on third downs. They continue to make some stops in the red zone. They are a bend but don't break defense, and then they get a few takeaways, and they keep them in the ball game. But that defense has been really, really surprisingly solid.
Well, the secondary's got 3 draft picks. DJ James, Jalen Simpson, and Nehemiah Pritchett are all going to get drafted. All going to be NFL guys. And Nehemiah Pritchett, to me, is the least talked about, most underrated player on this defense this year. I mean, since he came back from injury, he has been excellent in coverage, in my opinion. He had that pick there to keep the streak alive at the end. But you're not hearing his name a lot, and that's what you want from a corner. It was DJ James. Like, you didn't hear his name much last year. You hear it a little more. They picked on him a little bit this year. He's been strong, too. Had a few misses in coverage, but Nehemiah Pritchett, man, he's on it. He came back full speed.
And to back you up on that, Pro Football Focus has got him being targeted 11 times in the last 2 games. Now, granted, Mississippi State and Vanderbilt's quarterbacks, that their passing games are not awesome, but he's been targeted 11 times in the last 2 games. He's given up 3 catches for a total of 27 yards.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Sounds about right. It's like I said, when you don't hear his name, you know something's going good. The defensive line rotation continues to scare me. And I understand why Freeze has been hesitant to go with tempo because of it. I mean, when you take the jacks out, or the edge rushers, which are McLeod and McAllister, how many are you really rotating? Jason Jones, Justin Rogers, Marcus Harris, Zeke Walker, Keldrick Falk, Lawrence Johnson. Is there anybody else?
Nope.
That's 6 guys. Vandy even rotates 8 guys on the defensive line.
Yeah.
That should tell you where it's at right now. How about Jalen McLeod? Wasn't technically a starter at Appalachian State. Not really. He came in as a pass rusher. He was sort of your late down guy, your second and long, your passing situation guy. And I watched the film on him, watched the whole game of Appalachian State. They rotate 8 to 9 guys. I don't think people understand when you're only rotating 6 guys, how dangerous that can be. I mean, you're flirting with disaster. Yeah. You're talking about the SEC here. You're flirting with disaster with that. So that's why I will give him some credit where it's due here. I think being worried about that is okay. I think that's smart. I had this theory, Justin. Lincoln Riley just fired his defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch. Is that his name, Alex?
Yep, Alex Grinch.
Lincoln Riley has never had a good defense everywhere he's been as a head coach, not once. Oklahoma was decent at best one year maybe on defense, but they always had to fight and claw to win games with offensive performance. And now they're doing it at USC. Hugh Freeze has always had good defenses as a head coach. Now, he is seen as an offensive coach, offensive guy, I guess, since he calls plays. But I believe that Hugh Freeze is a defensive-minded coach. You're talking about why the defense is good and why they're doing more with less. I think it starts with Hugh Freeze. I think he has the defense in mind when he's doing things on offense. And that's how you turn things around. It starts with defense. I know today's college football world, it's all about offense, high-flying offense. You got to have that to win, and you do. But you're not going to win without a good defense either. You can forget it. And the best teams do. Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, all these teams that have been winning, Ohio State, they all play good defense. For the most part, Ohio State. My point is, I think Hugh Freeze has done a lot of things in regards to the defense all year long, and that's why some of these things that don't make sense to us and we're trying to figure it out, there's a bigger picture there. And he wanted to get to this point in the season with his defense intact because he knew depth is going to be a problem. The more I've thought about it, the more that makes sense to me, and the more it makes sense why the defense performs at a pretty high level every game. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think it was interesting hearing Hugh Freeze talk about his involvement in the defense, where he was like, "Look, I pretty much stay out of the way, but I get involved on third downs. I get involved leading up to the week on third downs, where I think as an offensive guy, I've got a pretty good idea of what they want to do, and even during the games, I have a pretty good idea of what they want to do on third downs." And so he tries to help Ron Roberts out there on that third down defense. But you talk about the defensive line. This past game, they had their best game.
They did.
I mean, you had Pro Football Focus had Jason Jones, Lawrence Johnson, Zeke Walker, and Marcus Harris all in the top 9 in terms of overall defensive grades. So 4 of the top 9. Zeke Walker easily had his best games. Three tackles, 4 stops, a couple pressures. Lawrence Johnson had a couple of stops, right there at the line of scrimmage. Jason Jones, they credit as playing really well with some pressures and things. So it was interesting. I mean, you look at the linebackers had their best game. Maybe the defensive line had their best game in terms of other guys stepping up and making plays. That was what's so funny about – so here's the deal. Just like in full transparency, we talk about Pro Football Focus a lot. And this is why I'm so hesitant to use their grades. I think it provides some perspective, and it's not the end all be all, but you can look up drops or snaps or some pressures and stuff.
Yeah.
But here you have Hugh Freeze comes out and says he thinks the linebackers had their best game of the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet Pro Football Focus graded Cam Riley the second to worst grade on the defense, and Larry Nixon the third, the worst grade on the defense. Now, how does the head coach who watched the film say, I think overall the linebackers had their best game, and then Pro Football Focus says, no, we think Cam Riley and Larry Nixon were literally the 2 worst defenders on the field?
Well,
that's why you take this stuff with a grain of salt, because I'm going to believe Hugh Freeze. I mean, Hugh Freeze is in the room with with Josh Aldridge. You know what I mean?
I definitely take it with a grain of salt too, especially when it comes to linebackers and secondary, because I do my own grades at Auburn Live, the corner. It's become a popular thing with the quarterback for sure. And I don't grade every play because I don't always know what's going on in every play. I have to know for sure what's going on in every play.
Right.
When you turn to the defense, you don't know what the linebackers are supposed to be doing. You don't know where he's supposed to be in coverage, DB.
Yep, you credit him with a coverage, and it's like, well, that really wasn't his guy.
Every once in a while, you can go, all right, that was clearly cover 3. This guy stepped the wrong way. He should have been deeper, whatever. But you can't do it every play, I promise. It's a lot more difficult on that side of the ball, especially, by the way, when they're not in the screen on TV.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know they're in the right place? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I can't grade a play because the routes aren't in the screen. Because, by the way, ESPN broadcast has been absolutely horrific this year. You know how many plays were missed? I got 4 plays that I couldn't grade or see on the ESPN broadcast because they just missed them for showing a graphic or being on commercial break.
Yeah. That's starting to become a thing where it's happening enough where you notice it. which is not great. It kind of goes back to the cornerback decision. If you start to notice it, it's an issue. We don't want to notice it.
Exactly. Yeah. That has irritated me. Like I can't get every single piece of play data because they are missing plays on the broadcast. How do you do that? They missed the first play of the game, by the way. Justin, I know you were there, but they missed the very first play. I don't know what happened on that play.
That's ridiculous.
Or the first offensive play. I think Auburn was on defense to start the game.
Yeah. Well, it was to Will Sheppard. Will Sheppard caught the very first 2 passes. They were Will Sheppard.
It was Auburn being on offense. It was like an 8-yard run by Peyton Thorne.
Oh, Peyton. Yeah, it was a scramble. I
Didn't
think
see
it was a scramble. Yeah.
And right when they cut back to it, Jarquez Hunter's running a long touchdown. You're like, how'd that happen?
Yeah. ESPN's crushing it. What do you think about the any thoughts on this Arkansas game? I think it's certainly a tricky, dangerous game. It's a long road trip, 3 p.m. Arkansas coming off their first SEC win, which is not what you wanted to see if you're Auburn. Team that's going to be coming home with some confidence. Offense is going to have a little bit of life and juice with a new OC. KJ Jefferson's always dangerous. This will be a different road environment than obviously Vanderbilt. And so I think it's a tricky game. I think Vegas has it maybe Arkansas a point or two favorite.
Yeah, Arkansas is definitely better. Game. They're better than Vandy.
This is like the Cal game to me, where it's like just win by 1, just win, just win the game. This is not one like Vandy winning by 1 is not good enough. That's a game where you should have won that game by 2+ touchdowns. Arkansas, despite their record, that's not this. I mean, that team lost at Alabama by 3, at LSU by 3, at Ole Miss by 7. Mississippi State game at home lost by 4. That was a terrible performance. They fired their OC, and then lost to BYU by 7. I mean, just a ton of close games. That's a competitive football team. You just try to escape that thing with a 1-point win, man.
I've seen enough positive growth and improvement from the defense, from the receivers, even Peyton Thorne, Jarquez Hunter, to know that Auburn is very much capable of winning that game. And I actually have some optimism that Auburn wins the game. That's might be a little bit crazy because I know there's a big narrative out there that Auburn loses this game, and very well could. And KJ Jefferson can go off at any time. That's the kind of player he is. They had a big game. Obviously, they fired their OC and still have good offense with whoever's calling it now. I can't think of his name. Guyton, is that his name?
Kenny Guyton, yeah. He played quarterback under Tom Herman, and then he coached with Kendall Briles. So it's going to look more like what they were last year. It's going to look more like last year with Kendall Briles than what they were doing with Dan Enos.
Well, Kendall Briles probably runs something similar to what Philip Montgomery knows about. That helps Auburn a little bit. Don't forget, Ron Roberts was at Baylor. I don't know if he was there at the same time as Art Briles, but there's probably a lot of stuff that was left over from what they did because they were so good at it. So there's some familiarity with that kind of offense, I would think. And defense has a chance to have a big day and stop them because a lot of defenses have stopped Arkansas for a good portion of the game. Like Alabama, Arkansas crawled back in that game in the late halves of the game. So it's like I think Auburn can win this game. I have some confidence in that. I just think there's enough good trends and there's enough on the team to win a game like that.
It'll be another good litmus test for this defense and Ron Roberts. You look back to last year, of course, at this point, Auburn lost 3 in a row going into the Arkansas game last year, hosting Arkansas. Of course, that's the loss that Brian Harsin was fired 2 days later. But that was just a ridiculous loss. Auburn lost 41-27 in that game. It was a little worse at one point.
Oh, yeah.
But Auburn gave up 520 yards in that game, 7.2 yards a play. Just atrocious. They gave up 276 yards rushing to Arkansas. Man, the defense looking at the numbers last year in this little stretch, just to show you how far this defense has come with basically the same roster. a few different pieces, but I mean, in large part, it's the same. You know, they almost beat LSU, and then they played Georgia, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. Auburn gave up 292 yards rushing to Georgia, 448 yards rushing to Ole Miss, and 276 yards rushing to Arkansas in consecutive weeks. They gave up 500 plus yards of offense in 3 straight weeks that were, of course, all losses. Um, and then you look at what they're doing, you know, this year. They give up 42 to Georgia and 48 to Ole Miss. This year they give up, you know, 27 and 28. It's amazing how far this defense has come. But Arkansas got them last year. You know, it's a little bit different players and different coaching staff, but I'm curious if some of those guys, Marcus Harris, Eugene Asante was on the team, some of that secondary players, curious if they remember that game and use it as a little motivation. I mean, Arkansas crushed them. They blew them out. And you know, we'll see if they take that personal. The other thing is Hugh Freeze at Liberty played Arkansas last year, beat them.
Beat them
At Arkansas.
Yeah, I watched that whole game last year. They were dominant. It was crazy how dominant they were in that game.
Yeah, so that's we'll dive into that a bunch on the modcast here in a couple of days, but I think it's a tricky game. I think it's one you just try to come out with a win, make it 3 in a row, and get you to New Mexico State, which is a game you should win, and then get you to the Iron Bowl.
Yep.
Just win the Arkansas game and keep the momentum train rolling. Because if you do, you're going to beat New Mexico State. You just, you know, assuming, you know, the disaster doesn't happen in some way. And then you roll into Iron Bowl with what you always thought, which is that 4-game winning streak and 7 wins on the resume. And man, that would be special. That would set up for a really, really special environment at that Iron Bowl.
Yep, and you get a bowl game.
Yeah, that'd be the other thing. I mean, we know they're probably going to beat New Mexico State, but it'd be cool to you know, to get to 6 wins, go ahead and get that bowl eligibility would be nice. That's what they're playing for. Hugh Freeze talked about that's a goal. He's not big on goals in terms of, you know, he believes more in the process and the journey and not necessarily the outcome. He wants the process to be the goal. And then he thinks that if that's the focus, it will produce the results, which is something, you know, not to bring up Nick Saban's name, but that's something Nick Saban, of course, became really well known for early in his career at Alabama. He would always talk about the process, the process, the process. And it's true. It's what championship coaches, I mean, championship programs are built on that. They're built on the process being the thing. Every player and coach buys into the process, and if that happens, it will produce the kind of results you want. So of course it's championships, but before that comes the process, which is why you hear Hugh Freeze talk about the journey being the goal, not 6 wins being the goal. Because if the journey is the goal and doing things right every day is the goal, you'll get to 6 wins. That goal will take care of itself. So be big for Auburn to get to a bowl game, and it looks like they're going to. I was kind of looking, by the way, I was looking at bowl projections, or I was sort of looking at where the SEC might go. I don't think the SEC is going to fill their allotment. I mean, South Carolina probably not making a bowl. Florida, that loss to Arkansas was massive for Florida. They still have, I think, Missouri, LSU, and Florida State, and I think they're sitting at 5 wins. They may not make it.
Oh boy, that's rough. But that was
double check.
I put it on the board too. That Arkansas Florida game. A lot of people wanted Florida to win just because, you know, you don't want Arkansas to be overly confident going in, but you know, comes back down to this balance. You want to win on the field first. You want to win in the living room first. And Auburn's in some battles with Florida, and you know, wasn't horrible for Florida to lose.
Yeah. I mean, they're
case.
recruiting well too.
They are number 3 in the country
in
recruiting.
Yeah, so they're sitting there at 5 wins, and their last 3 games are this week against LSU. Looks like that is, let's see where that game's played. In Baton Rouge. Then they play at Missouri. And then they host Florida State. So they absolutely could go 5 wins and not make a bowl.
it's going to be tough for them if they don't finish strong to hold on to that number 3 recruiting class. But as a guy like Billy Napier, I mean, Auburn was in the same position a year ago with Harsin. Take away all the extracurricular stuff that went on with Harsin, and you go to the record, and it looks very similar. Do they fire the guy after all that? But the recruiting's better. I mean, does that save him? You think?
I don't know, but what's interesting about the way that you're looking at that and the way that we're used to looking at that is you want them to lose, right, for recruiting. Well, yes, but now with the transfer portal, just keep recruiting them. You know,
Yeah,
within I don't there's obviously rules. Once you get on campus, you don't need to be straight up
yeah,
tampering. But
yeah,
look, Florida could sign most of these kids, and then if it goes south next year and Florida goes, whoa, we made a mistake, and they fire Billy Napier, so, or even if they don't, if it just goes south, a lot of those kids could turn around and transfer. And so that's why it's so important now in recruiting. If you finish second, so you're like neck and neck, Florida gets the kid, whatever.
yeah.
Man, they could turn around and transfer a year later. They could come right back to you. So you just got to figure out ways to stay connected to some of these kids through their parents or whatever it is, which is why you need like the staffing in the whole portal is just that's a whole nother discussion. But you almost need people to be like, hey, stay in touch with these guys, like their parents or their coach.
Right.
Stay in touch with them. And because we were right there. And let's just stay in touch with them for the next year. And like let's see if they feel like they made the right decision. You know, straight up tamper. You're not calling up the coach going, hey, tell him he made a mistake. You're
Yeah.
just making sure that connection's still there. So if the kid gets to where he went and if he feels like maybe he doesn't love it there, you're in a position to maybe lure somebody back if you still have an opportunity. But that's like a whole nother level of recruiting that we haven't had to really do in the past.
Yeah. And I'll just tell you, um, when you have the kid's phone number, it doesn't just go away, and the kid can always call them.
It's true.
There it is. There it
It's very
is.
true. Zach said that's what James Madison is hoping for. They have to get a waiver though, right, Zach? What I saw.
Yeah, they got something with their eligibility. Their
Well,
bowl.
when you jump into FBS for the first year, you can't make a bowl, which is beyond stupid. Explain that. Like, welcome to the party, but hold on, but you can't go to a bowl in year one. Well, why not? You're in the thing. Why can't I go in a bowl? But they're trying to. I saw where they're trying to do a waiver to get bowl eligible, James Madison. But yeah, that would be a team that could jump in there. But back to what I was saying was the SEC. I don't know that they're going to fill all their spots. Um, yeah, Zach says either a waiver or not enough teams earn bowl eligibility. They need a bunch of teams to go under 6-6. Well, I don't think Carolina's getting there. I don't think Florida's getting there. Obviously Vanderbilt's not. I don't know where Mississippi State's at. I don't know if they're at 4 or 5. I don't know how close they are.
They're 4, I
Either
think.
way, for Auburn, it looks a lot like you're looking at Liberty Bowl. You're looking at Music City Bowl, Duke's Mayo Bowl. I probably
Yeah.
go with one of those 3 at the moment. I don't think they're going to fall. If they could beat Arkansas and get to 7, that should eliminate them from Birmingham Bowl, Gasparilla Bowl, lower tier bowls. They'll be in competition with somebody like Kentucky, somebody like Texas
Yeah.
A&M. There's the Texas Bowl, but if A&M gets bowl eligible, I feel like that's probably where they'll end up. You generally want to SEC works with these bowls to try to keep teams where fans will go.
Just
So
don't let it be Wisconsin again.
yeah, well, let's see. Duke's Mayo is against Liberty Bowl is against the Big 12 team. I saw West Virginia as a prediction. Duke's Mayo is against
It's
I
got to
can't
be a
remember
Big
where Duke's
Ten,
Mayo.
Big Ten team, or no ACC. It's got to
I
be
think it's
ACC.
ACC, and then the what's the third one I mentioned?
Music City Bowl.
Music City's Big Ten. Yeah. Yeah, Music
Yeah.
City's Big Ten.
Big Ten would be Iowa State, maybe Minnesota again.
Listen, Auburn needs to get off the big. Like on one hand, I want Auburn to play a Big Ten team because they need to get that taste out of their mouth. But on the other hand, my gosh, Auburn recently they beat Purdue, which Purdue's overmatched in that 2018 bowl game. But since then, they've lost to Penn State twice in the regular season. They got
Yeah,
shellacked by Northwestern in a bowl, and they got shellacked by Minnesota in a bowl.
they did get beat by Northwestern. They have also beat Northwestern in a bowl in
Yeah,
2009.
years ago. So I don't know where they'll end up, but that's kind of where it's looking. Maybe Memphis, maybe Nashville, maybe Charlotte. But we'll see. A lot of game. The next 2 weeks we'll We'll say a lot in terms of what's gonna
People
go.
downplay bowls these days, but Zach, latest projections say Auburn, Oklahoma, and Texas Bowl. Wow, that would be fun.
That would be weird. I mean,
Oklahoma's good.
they're about to play, but see, that's one I think that the SEC would avoid because they're going to play next year
They're
in
going to be
Auburn.
SEC. Yeah.
I don't think the SEC is going to be like, well, hold on, we want we want that matchup next year. We don't want to take away the shine of Oklahoma coming to Auburn next year and Texas playing Alabama next year. We don't want to take the shine away from that by letting them play in a bowl this year. I think that'd be a terrible decision.
Well, people downplay bowls, but after you weren't in one for a year, talking about a bowl is a lot of fun. I have to admit. Like, oh yeah, that's kind of exciting that you might be in a bowl after you missed
Yeah.
one a year ago. By the way, that reminded me. Did you see Nate Bargatze on the?
I didn't see his whole thing on game day.
Gosh, that was hilarious. He said they were picking the Oklahoma State game. He's like, Oklahoma's coming to the SEC. They're in for a rude awakening. They're going to be the new Vandy because he's a Vandy fan. I thought it was great.
Yeah, Zach says Auburn, Clemson, and the Dukes Mayo, and I also saw Auburn, West Virginia, and the Liberty. So it's somewhere in there. Auburn, Clemson would be. I'm so over that matchup over the last decade. I've seen it multiple times going back. I saw it in 2010, saw it in 2011, saw it in 2016, I think. Saw it in a 97 bowl game. Seen it plenty lately. And Clemson, for all their issues, they're still really, really talented. They're more talented than Auburn. So,
they are.
And that being in Charlotte would be that'd be quite the tough matchup for Auburn in that one. So that's not. I don't think Auburn fans would be super pumped about seeing Clemson again, but it'd be a pretty good crowd. All right, let's all right, yeah, we can talk basketball for a quick second. Of course, Auburn played Baylor. Really good game. Baylor's ranked. Auburn loses 88-82. I thought I was really impressed with Auburn. I honestly thought they played a little bit better than I thought they would. Defensively, they still have a ways to go. Can't give up 88 points. Can't give up 54 points in the second half. Or no, 54. Too many fouls. Of course, Bruce Pearl wasn't happy with the officiating, but you still have to move your feet. You still have to play good defense. You can't commit 30-something fouls. That's not good. Offensively, have to be happy with 80-plus points in the opener against a ranked opponent. A lot of guys can contribute. That's kind of what you saw from Auburn. A lot of guys can contribute. Aiden Holloway, Janai Broome, Jalen Williams, Denver Jones, Chad Baker-Mazara, KD Johnson. There's a bunch of guys that can go get you anywhere from 6 to 8 to 19, 18, 19, 20 points. There were some good signs. Auburn rebounded the ball really well. That's not something they always did well last year. So to match Baylor, who's generally a fantastic rebounding team, to go toe-to-toe with them on offensive and defensive rebounds, that was huge. Auburn had more blocks. Auburn had more fast break points. They had more bench points. So there was a lot about that game that was really even. The issue was late in the game. Auburn turned the ball over, I think 5 times in like a 4-minute span late in that game. Really, when Baylor made their run, that was not good. You had 7 turnovers from Trey Donaldson and Aiden Holloway, 4 from Trey and 3 from Aiden. Aiden had a couple turnovers late. That's really, I think, a big spot where Auburn's going to have to figure some things out. Who's the closer going to be, whether it's Trey or Aiden? Probably Aiden, I would imagine. But that's got to be cleaned up. Closing games out. That was the issue last night. If you had a more experienced point guard that knew how to close a game out, you probably don't commit some of those turnovers. You have some, you run some offense, and you can maybe squeak that game out. But they didn't play well on offense, and it transitioned, and they gave up buckets on defense, and then they lost the lead. But overall, I was encouraged by what I saw. Now Bruce is not happy because they missed an opportunity for a fantastic non-conference win, a great win that would have been a good win on Ken Palm, and come Selection Sunday, that would have been a win Auburn could point to in terms of seeding. That would have been a big one. because they're not going to play a team as good as Baylor the rest of the non-conference slate. They'll play Indiana, they're okay. They'll play USC. USC's pretty good. They might be. I mean, USC might be as good as Baylor. It might be a comparable. Baylor's a little bit better, but they missed an opportunity. But all in all, from what I saw from that Auburn team, there's no reason they can't win every other non-conference game. That includes Indiana and Atlanta. That includes USC and Auburn. They go up to New York to play in that tournament, but I think Auburn's the best team there. They just got to figure some things out, closing games out, and just playing a little bit better defense, which can get cleaned up. But keep in mind, Baylor generally is a really, really efficient offensive team. So, no excuse to giving up 88 or 54 and a half. But I don't know. I saw a lot of things to grow on, but I'm kind of with Bruce. Missed opportunity. You hate that, but a lot of good things to grow on, I think.
I think just my takeaways from what little I know about basketball, but from a year ago, it just seems like there's so many more scoring threats. It's just scoring threats. I mean, you got a shooter now. Denver Jones is a shooter, pretty pure shooter too. It looks like Trey Donaldson can score. Aiden Holloway can score. Janai Broome, he creates paint possessions for himself, which that's something that a guy like maybe Austin Wiley, who you had not too long ago, can't do. He's just not a guy that was that dynamic on offense. Even Walker Kessler to an extent. So, I mean, you can run a lot of things around him, and then you got shooters around him that can do, that can score. It's like some of those teams, like Jabari Smith, they had to give it to him in the last minutes every time because he was the guy. Now you got guys that can really, you can put it in their hands in clutch situations. They can score. I think that's the biggest difference. I think Bruce Pearl team's going to have good defense at some point. And there's a lot of athleticism, like Chad Baker Mazzara. That guy's athletic. He's not just a big guy. He's athletic. And Jalen Williams, super athletic. They can run the court all day long on you. And how many did they rotate? 10 or 11 guys total?
They played 11. Yeah, played 11. 10 guys scored. 1, 2. Yeah, 10 guys scored. The only player that didn't score was Lior. He only played 5 minutes. Everybody that played, and then everybody else. You had 10 guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You had 10 players play double-digit minutes. 10 guys got double-digit minutes, and every one of those guys scored. And 9 of those 10 made 2 buckets or more. Only one guy, Chaney's the only guy that only made 1 shot. Everybody else made at least 2 shots in that game.
Yeah, Chaney Johnson, he's interesting. Not sure what his fit is yet, but he's interesting, no doubt.
Yeah, he's still a little raw. Looked like he was a little as good of an athlete as he is. He looked a little out of place sometimes. Maybe kind of where does he fit in?
Yeah,
But he's a great. I think from what I saw, as good as an athlete as he is, Jalen Williams is it needs to be the starter there. They just got to figure out
Yeah.
those late games. Aiden Holloway needs to be the guy, but he needs to. I think Aiden maybe took it upon himself a little bit too much, and I
Yeah.
think Aiden is creative enough that he needs to be the guy late in the games. But he's got to rely on Denver Jones, Janai Broome, Jalen Williams. There's weapons there that if Aiden will do his job and be creative, and of course Aiden can score too. But there's other weapons there, and I think Aiden maybe he had a couple turnovers where he maybe felt like felt a little pressure, maybe he's trying to do too much. But yeah, a bunch of weapons, and of course Denver and Aiden, who both can now shoot the 3. Even Janai stepping out, but Denver and Aiden are going to be your 2 guys that you didn't have last year that can shoot the 3, that could go knock down 3 threes in a game or 4. And they didn't have. I mean, they didn't. Wendell wasn't that guy because he couldn't create his own shot really, and he wasn't that. He wasn't. I don't know. He had to shoot a lot. Wendell had to shoot a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just some scoring threats. I think that's an upgrade from the team a year ago.
But they'll be all right. They come back home, play Southeastern Louisiana on Friday night in Neville Arena. Hope that it's packed. We have a great crowd there. But I like what I saw from this Auburn team. A lot of guys, a lot of competitiveness, a lot of guys who can score and contribute. They're gonna be right there. They're gonna be right there competing in that top 4 or 5 group in the SEC. I think A&M and Tennessee are a tick above everybody else. But I think, and then I would say Kentucky And Arkansas is probably up there. Probably A&M, Tennessee, and Arkansas are probably the best 3 teams, and then Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn are probably that next group.
Yeah.
And then you got teams like Mississippi State and Florida that should be pretty good. Florida's a team to watch out for as well. But I thought all in all, a good start for Auburn. You want to get the win. They were right there. They blew. I mean, the reality, they blew the lead. They led most of the game. That sucks to have blown the lead. But projecting forward for what this team can be, that was a good sign. From what you saw, you're like, okay, all right. A lot of new pieces. I was a little unsure maybe exactly what they look like. That's a tournament team. The tournament team, it's a team that's capable of doing some things this year. It's a team that's capable of getting in the NCAA tournament, winning a couple games. That's what they showed me. So you just got to build on it.
Right.
All right. Let's roll. We'll be back in a couple of days with the modcast as Auburn prepares to play at Arkansas and try to win 3 in a row in conference. They haven't won 3 in a row in conference since 2020, which is kind of like, wow. Just 3 straight SEC games. Auburn football hasn't done that. Hasn't won that since won 3 in a row and since 2020. So we'll see if they can get that done. We'll talk about that on the modcast here in a couple of days. Make sure you go to auburnlive.com, subscribe. Bunch of recruiting news going on, basketball stuff obviously getting cranked up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. And obviously special shout out to our sponsors, Session Cocktail, as well as GameTime.co. Appreciate them and what they do. We'll be out. We'll see you next time.